Hello, welcome to my channel. Today's story will be narrated by Dorian. Let's get started.
Evangeline Matthews folded the last of her neatly pressed uniforms into the brown leather suitcase that had belonged to her mother. She paused for a moment, running her fingers along the worn edges of the case, as if the familiar object would steady her nerves. The apartment in Briarwick was nearly empty now, boxes stacked against the walls, curtains drawn back to reveal the buzzing city lights for the last time. She had dreamed of this moment for years. Ever since she was a girl, Evangeline had been enchanted by the idea of small-town life. Neighbors who knew each other by name, quiet streets that smelled of rain and tilled earth, and evenings spent beneath a sky sprinkled with more stars than Briarwick's polluted haze ever allowed. Now, at 26, she was finally leaving behind the endless sirens, crowded sidewalks, and sleepless nights of the city. Ahead of her waited a nursing position at Hollows Creek Community Hospital. By the time she locked her apartment door for the last time, she was feeling a bit teary-eyed. She carried her suitcase down the stairwell and out to the street where her pride and joy was parked. A sunshine yellow Volkswagen Beetle, small and stubborn, but dependable. Evangeline slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and the little car coughed to life. She grinned, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear.
Here we go.
The first hour on the road felt like shedding an old skin. Evangeline hummed along to the radio, her thoughts filled with imaginings of her new life, introducing herself to patients, attending potluck dinners, maybe even learning how to garden. Everything about Hollows Creek shimmered in her mind as though it belonged in a storybook. If only she knew what waited for her. The Beetle rattled happily along, its bright color catching every flicker of morning sun. But after 5 solid hours of driving, the joy began to dull under the weight of exhaustion. She had covered nearly 250 kilometers, though her mind converted distance into a smaller measure. Only 5 more kilometers until she reached the town. Just 5. Yet her eyes stung with tears of fatigue, and the sharp focus she had begun the drive with was slipping. Evangeline drummed her fingers on the steering wheel.
Don't be ridiculous. You can make it.
But the truth settled in her shoulders like sandbags. She had not slept well the night before. Too much packing. Too many bittersweet goodbyes with neighbors. And too much excitement about the future. Her body demanded rest. She squinted into the dusky light. Evening was approaching faster than she expected. The sky had deepened into shades of pink and violet, and shadows stretched across the asphalt. She needed to stop. Scanning the roadside, she searched for a sign, a building, anything that promised a bed. Hollows Creek was so close, but she knew better than to drive overtired. Not on roads this lonely. At last, she spotted a weathered wooden sign leaning slightly to one side. The Red Inn. Relief washed through her. She slowed the Beetle, turned onto the gravel drive, and followed the winding path until the shape of a large house emerged from behind the trees. Its roofline slanted like a pair of crooked eyebrows, windows lit with a soft golden glow. A porch wrapped around the front, and the faint outline of rocking chairs swayed gently in the evening breeze. The car came to a halt in the inn's small parking area. Evangeline switched off the engine, listening as the familiar hum died away. replaced by the low chorus of crickets and the creak of the rocking chairs. She let out a long breath, her chest rising and falling with equal parts relief and unease. Something about the inn made the hair on her arms rise.
This will do.
She lifted her suitcase from the trunk, straightened her shoulders, and walked toward the porch steps. The boards groaned softly under her weight. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once and fell silent. As she reached for the door handle, Evangeline's heartbeat quickened. Maybe it was nothing, just nerves, just the strangeness of her first night away from Briarwick. Still, she hesitated for a breath longer, then pushed the door open and stepped inside. If Evangeline had known better, she would have turned back and driven away. Everything about the inn felt wrong. From the moment Evangeline stepped through the door, the air was stale, heavy with dust that swirled lazily in the dim yellow light. It smelled faintly of old wood and something sour, like fruit left too long in a bowl. The lobby was expansive but strangely empty. No cheerful floral wallpaper or framed countryside paintings like she expected. Just tall, uneven walls painted in a fading beige, with shadows clinging stubbornly to the corners. She heard the creak before she saw him. From a side doorway emerged a man with shoulders hunched forward, his spine curved, as if gravity had spent decades pulling him down. He wore a brown vest that might have once been neat, but now sagged in wrinkles. His hands hung long and thin at his sides, and his smile stretched too wide. It was the teeth that caught her first, small, square, and oddly uniform, like the little grill at the front of her yellow Beetle. The comparison flashed so strongly in her mind that she shivered.
Evening, ma'am.
Evangeline shifted her suitcase against her leg. She told herself she was just exhausted, that fatigue had a way of warping first impressions. It was 7 o'clock. She could easily get back in her car, check for another place, and push through the last few kilometers. But her body throbbed with weariness. Her eyelids fought to close. She forced herself to cling to the practical thought. Nothing was wrong. This was simply an inn on the edge of a small town. Still, she couldn't help it. Her fingers tightened around the handle of her suitcase. The man shuffled closer, his shoes scuffing against the wooden floor.
Long road?
Yes, I'm headed to Hollows Creek. Just needed a place for the night.
You'll find rest here.
He moved behind a counter that looked more like a pulpit, tall and separating. A ledger rested on top, the pages curled and brittle. He slid it toward her with one long finger.
Write your name. Room 5 is open.
What about the others?
The man's smile faltered just a fraction, but it was enough. His jaw stiffened. His eyes flicked briefly toward the far end of the wall.
Room 6. Closed. Been under construction for a long while. You won't want to stay there.
The hallway to the guest rooms stretched long and dim. Each door painted the same dull shade of red, numbers faded as though scrubbed too often. The floor groaned under her boots, the sound echoing far too loud in the silence. She could feel the emptiness of the inn breathing against her neck. Room 5 waited near the end of the hall. She couldn't help glancing at room 6 as she passed. Its door looked no different from the rest, but the number was scratched deeper, gouged into the wood as if clawed there. A thin strip of yellowed, curling paper was taped across the handle. Under construction. Her hand tightened on her suitcase. She walked faster. Room 5 opened with a reluctant click, the door yawning wide to reveal a space that smelled faintly of mildew. The curtains were drawn tight, fabric heavy and damp to the touch. A single lamp stood crooked on the nightstand, casting a cone of light across the bedspread, which was patterned in faded roses that looked more like bloodstains in the half-glow. Evangeline placed her suitcase down, exhaled, and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped too deeply, swallowing her weight in a way that made her feel trapped.
It's just for one night.
She closed her eyes, but when she opened them again, the dust was still dancing in the air, and the silence of room 5 pressed against her ears, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. The moment her name slid through the wall again, Evangeline's exhaustion snapped into something sharper. It was no longer just fear. It was a fixation.
Who's there?
Her voice cracked with desperation. She waited, heart drumming, but the silence stretched thick. The old inn seemed to groan around her, beams shifting, wood settling. But beneath it, there was something else. Breathing. Slow, steady, deliberate. Evangeline staggered back, staring at the wall as though she could force it to speak again. She should have packed and left this cursed place, but instead, her body moved without reason. She pulled her suitcase closer, opened it, and dug out a flashlight. The thin beam cut across the room in a trembling arc before settling on the door. She crept into the hallway, barefoot, the boards icy beneath her feet. The flashlight quivered in her hand, its beam crawling along the faded red doors. When she reached room 6, she froze. The paper taped across the knob hung looser now, one corner peeled back as if it had been teased from the inside. Her breath hitched. She raised her hand, then snatched it back, nails digging into her palm. The whisper came again, not muffled this time, but close, as though pressed right against the door.
Let me out. Why?
No answer. Only silence that seemed to smirk at her hesitation. She fumbled at the knob, rattling it before she could stop herself. Locked. Of course it was locked. But the moment the metal shook, a low chuckle rolled from the other side, deep and rattling, as though the room itself had laughed. She stumbled backward, nearly dropping the flashlight. The hallway seemed darker now, longer. The air thickened, dust rising in a faint mist. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide under the covers like a child. But something stronger tugged her forward, a pull she couldn't resist. She crouched, pressing her ear to the keyhole. The blackness beyond was absolute, but she swore she felt warmth push against her skin, as if something inside leaned close to listen back. Her name again, whispered so tenderly that it almost sounded affectionate.
Evangeline.
She bit her lip until she tasted blood. Her hands trembled as she gripped the knob once more.
I can't.
The sound shifted, no longer gentle, but coaxing, insistent. Scrapes tore across the floorboards inside, chairs dragging, furniture shoving. Then a violent slam rattled the entire doorframe, and Evangeline fell back on her hands, the flashlight clattering to the ground. Its beam rolled wildly, catching glimpses of peeling wallpaper, shadows twitching in the corners. She scrambled for the light and pointed it at the door. The paper was gone. Not torn, not fluttering to the floor. Gone. And the knob was turning. Slowly, purposefully, from the inside. Evangeline screamed, stumbling backward down the hall, her flashlight swinging wildly. The door never opened fully, but the sliver of black that spread across the frame felt alive, like an open mouth waiting to swallow her whole. She fled into room 5, slamming the door shut, dragging the dresser across it with trembling arms. Her chest heaved, her ears straining for the sound of pursuit, but none came. Only silence, stretching endlessly, pressing against the thin walls until she wanted to claw her way out of her own skin. When the whisper came again, it was not from the hall. It was behind her.
Evangeline.
Evangeline froze, the whisper curling around her like smoke. She turned slowly, a flashlight beam jittering across the peeling wallpaper. The room was empty, yet the voice had come from behind her, as clear as if someone had been leaning against her shoulder. Her pulse thudded in her throat. She dragged the dresser back from the door, wood screeching across the floor. Her body was moving without permission now, guided by something deeper than fear. She knew what she had to do, though she hated herself for it. She had to open room 6. The hallway was colder, darker, as if every light had dimmed just for her. The door stood waiting, its knob gleaming faintly like an eye. For a long moment, she stared, the flashlight beam trembling across the wood. Then, her hand reached out. The knob turned easily this time, with no resistance and no tape. The door opened with a sigh, and the darkness inside seemed to breathe. Evangeline raised her light, its glow carving a narrow path across the room. At first, she saw nothing. Then, she saw dust, cobwebs, and the slumped silhouette of a chair in the corner. But then, in the middle of the room, a small figure appeared. A little girl. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her hair hung in tangled strands over her pale face, her dress tattered, the hem brushing the floor. She stood perfectly still, hands at her sides, eyes catching the light with an uncanny gleam.
Sweetheart, are you lost?
The girl didn't answer. She only tilted her head, slow and deliberate, as if measuring Evangeline's soul. Evangeline stepped inside before she realized what she was doing. The door creaked shut behind her, sealing them in. The flashlight flickered, shadows dancing across the girl's face.
Do you need help?
The girl's lips parted. The voice that spilled out was not a child's. It was the same voice that had whispered her name all night.
You came.
What are you?
I was waiting for you.
The room seemed to close in, the shadows thickening, pressing against her skin. The air stank of mildew and iron. The flashlight dimmed again, its beam shrinking until it barely illuminated the girl's face. Evangeline tried to move, but her legs were heavy, rooted to the spot. She could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her skull. The girl stepped forward. With every shuffle, the floorboards moaned as though in pain. She stopped inches away, looking up with those dark, gleaming eyes.
You left me here. Don't you remember?
No, I don't know you.
Yes, you do.
Evangeline dropped the flashlight. The beam rolled across the floor, landing on the corner of the room. For a split second, she saw something else there. Dozens of children's shoes, lined neatly in the shadows, some old and rotting, others fresh and clean. Her scream caught in her throat. When she turned back, the girl was inches away, lifting her small, cold hand to Evangeline's cheek. Her touch was icy, burning into the skin.
Now, you stay.
The door slammed shut behind them. The little girl's hand was like ice pressed against Evangeline's cheek, sinking deeper, as though her palm might slide right into her skin. Evangeline jerked back violently, knocking over the flashlight, plunging the room into suffocating darkness.
No!
Evangeline shoved the child away, but the girl didn't stumble. She hovered where she was, small body still, head tilting in that unnatural, predatory way.
You don't get to leave.
The shadows writhed, stretching long fingers up the walls. Evangeline could feel them tugging at her ankles, slithering beneath her clothes. She kicked and thrashed, stumbling toward the door, but the knob wouldn't budge. It was cold and slick, as though coated with oil. Behind her, the girl giggled. The sound was high and sharp, stabbing into Evangeline's ears. Evangeline's panic broke into fury. She grabbed the flashlight from the floor and swung it like a weapon. The beam caught the girl full in the face. For the first time, the child recoiled, hissing like an animal. Her skin shimmered, rippling as though it were water barely holding form. Seizing the moment, Evangeline rammed her shoulder against the door. Once, twice, a third time. It burst open with a scream of splintering wood. She didn't look back. She tore down the hallway, lungs on fire, footsteps echoing like gunshots in the silent inn. But she could hear it, the patter of little feet chasing her, the whisper following.
Run, Evangeline. Run faster.
She stumbled down the staircase, clutching the flashlight, her shoes slipping on the worn carpet. The lobby seemed different now, warped and stretched. The curved man at the desk was gone, though the chair rocked as though someone had just risen from it. The shadows were alive here too. They crawled across the walls, curling into shapes, hands, faces, gaping mouths. They leaned toward her, trying to catch her, but she darted past, heart hammering. The front door was ahead. Freedom. As she reached for the handle, something yanked her hair back hard, slamming her to the ground. She screamed, twisting, and saw the little girl standing over her, expression blank, but eyes shining with something ancient.
You can't leave. You belong here now.
Evangeline kicked out, connecting with the girl's small frame. The child flew back unnaturally far, hitting the wall with a wet crack. For a breathless moment, Evangeline thought it was over. Then the girl stood, her limbs bent wrong, her smile stretching too wide.
That was rude.
Evangeline scrambled to her feet, ripped the front door open, and burst into the night. The air outside was sharp, clean, but it did nothing to steady her. She sprinted across the gravel lot, her little yellow beetle glowing like salvation in the moonlight. Her hands shook as she jammed the key into the lock, yanked the door open, and threw herself inside. She slammed it shut, fumbling for the ignition. The engine coughed, sputtered, then roared to life. Relief flooded her chest. She was going to make it. She had to. The headlights cut across the inn. For the first time, she saw it as it truly was. The windows were broken, black holes gaping like eyes. The walls sagged with rot, ivy crawling up the frame. The "Inn" sign hung crooked, its letters faded and peeling. She had been inside a corpse of a building. Evangeline screamed and slammed her foot on the gas. The beetle lurched forward, tires spitting gravel, the inn shrinking in her rearview mirror. She didn't stop to breathe, didn't dare. 10 minutes down the road, her chest began to unclench. The night was still. The only sound was the hum of the engine. She dared to think she'd outrun it. But then, faintly, a sound. Breathing. Slow. Deliberate. Right behind her. Her eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. At first, there was only darkness. Then, as the car jolted over a bump, the headlights behind caught the back seat. The little girl sat there. Her hair was matted, her head tilted, and she smiled with that same too-wide grin. Evangeline choked on her scream, swerving the car wildly.
No, you can't be here.
You drove me home.
Evangeline slammed the brakes. The Beetle skidded to a stop in the middle of the empty road. She threw the door open and tumbled out, gravel slicing her knees. When she looked back, the car was empty. For a moment, silence. The engine ticked. The world was still. Then she heard the crunch of footsteps on gravel. She turned slowly. The girl stood on the road, barefoot, smiling, her dress fluttering in the breeze. Evangeline ran. She didn't care where, didn't care how far, but deep down, she knew the truth. She had left room 6, but room 6 had not left her. And now, the girl would follow. Forever. Or not.
I hope you've enjoyed Dorian's story today. If you'd like to see more, click subscribe, leave a thumbs up, and drop a comment down below. Until next time, I hope you have a great day.